Welcome to Texomiya Podcast. Two little people from two big places making little big deals about everything.
From remedies of the mountain heights to the gridiron of the coastal plains, a Texan and a Texomiya will bring you everything from Avatar Aang to Eric Auerbach in our professional and personal opinions.
God bless America. God bless Texas.
Joi Ai Oxom. Okay, so this is our pilot episode of Texomiya Podcast. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go over a little bit about the podcast, about ourselves, and about Texas and Oxom, from which the podcast gets its name. So, you want to talk about who are we?
Who are we? My name is Shubrelina Decca Simmons. My husband, Andrew Robert Simmons. I'm from Oxom. He's from Texas.
I am Texan. She is a Texomiya. Together we are Texomiya. So, we'll come back a little bit more to about who we are, but we're going to take that Texomiya in this first episode, go over some brief overviews about some of the highlights from the history of both places, and talk about how we think the two synergize quite well, and we think that that had a hand in the two of us coming together because we both care quite a lot about our homes.
We do. And we also believe that everything happens for a reason. Now, on that note, I'm going to stop you right there. And remember that plaque that Mom and Dad made for us for our wedding?
The one right there?
Yeah. This, I think, is the epitomization of how we met. So why don't you read it out?
All right. I did write it after all.
You did.
This was something that you asked me to put together that we could put on our registry for our wedding. A little story about how we came together, and you explicitly told me to make it as mush as possible. So,
well, you also have a way with lofty words.
I do have a way with lofty words.
Yeah.
So I made it epic, sort of. It reads, in the fateful year of 2018, two souls converged on a distant and uncharted town in another land. From east to west and west to east, they followed the threads of fate until they reached the resting place in Athens, Georgia, land of lost and downtrodden souls. Yet come they did, and in the red land round the university, swift and aright entered inseverable bonds of friendship, wherein for 4 years long they travelled up the Mount of Academ, enduring trying trials and deadly plague, until the year, the 5th, when they did feel the tug of fate between their chests, the yarn of divine will upon their hearts, which with each pull beat more as one, until December in the year of 2022, the pair declared before the universe the mortal and eternal joining of theirselves forever and an age. There we are.
I don't know about epic, but it sure is good.
It's cute.
It's very lovely. I love it.
So, that's a very lofty and poetic way of saying we met during our PhD program in Athens, Georgia, at the University of Georgia, in the Comparative Literature Department.
Which is now the Comparative Literature and Intercultural Studies Department.
Yes. they added something on there.
It's important.
It makes it sound more sophisticated.
It is. Both go hand in hand.
So, we met in our first year there for both of us. First interactions that we had were in the office space that we and 10 other graduate students of literature shared. And in the classroom on, what was it? Transnational Literatures. No, that was the one that you were in and I was not. Which
That was it.
we were in the graduate level of it?
Transnational Literature. The one
Yes.
that I was in was different.
I see. That one was a 4.6. The one we were in was 8.
That one was a 4.6 and that was the year after.
Anyway, the most interactions that we got in our very first year was in the classroom of the late and great Dr. Mihai Speriosu, Transnational Literatures, at 8 in the morning.
8 or 8:30. No later.
So, after we stayed up until 2, 3 in the morning, writing and grading papers, since both of us taught at least one, often 2 courses per semester while we were there, and each of those courses had 40. Well, they changed it. They dropped it down by 2, right?
I guess, yeah. I don't know if it's still 38. It might be less, but...
It was 40, and the graduate students collectively made a request that the cat be brought down because these were all literature classes. They were all writing intensive classes, which means that a graduate student with 2 classes worth of students had 80 people with essays of, at least 1,000, probably by the end of things, 2,000 words apiece.
Yeah,
so
depends midterm or final. Midterm is usually shorter. Final papers are bigger.
So, anyway, stay up late, doing all of that, and writing your own papers, and then you get up at 8 in the morning and go talk about, who all did we talk about in that course? We did,
A bunch of authors.
A bunch of authors.
Not important. Very important, yes.
Anyway.
Not right now, anyway.
I'm going down a tangent, and she's going to stop me frequently from doing that. So,
yeah.
Anyway, that's where we met. And as the mush says, it was 5 years that we knew each other before we decided that we wanted to join up forever. So that, as they say, is that. Yes?
That's us.
So we mentioned before, when we went through our little jingle about the Texomiya Podcast, 2 little people from 2 big places. They are 2 big places. The one is Texas, where we are coming to you from now. And the other is Assam in northeast India, where my lovely wife comes from. And we'll segue now into everything about those. Not everything, there's way too much, but enough about those, the highlights as we call them. And then we'll talk about how we think they synergize. So, are we starting with Texas?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
So, just a quick history and culture of Texas. Where do I start? We'll start with the colonization of Texas, the European colonization of Texas.
Yeah, we'll just call it, we'll just talk about the facts that are important to each of us about the places that we come from.
Yes. Highlights.
Just the highlights.
So we'll start with the colonization of Texas, the area that would become Texas. The European colonization, which eventually, by the end of things, is where the phrase Six Flags Over Texas comes from. Those are the flags of six nations that claimed ownership over the territory that is now Texas, starting with Spain and France at the very early years. And then Mexico threw off Spanish rule. And then the Republic of Texas threw off Mexican rule. And then after that, the Republic of Texas quickly sought entry to the Union of the United States of America. Texas served a brief period of time, 4 years to be exact, under the flag of the Confederate States of America, and then returned to the United States. So that's another story that we can talk about at length later if we want. So, like I said, it started with the French and the Spanish expeditions going up the coast. But the real European settlement of most of Texas started after the independence of Mexico from Spain. And at that time, Mexico began sending out or establishing, sponsoring charter settlements. These were especially charters of United States American settlers coming in, but also Mexican settlers going in. Anyone who wanted to venture out and stake a claim to the land was given a charter to found an empresario by the Mexican government. And this was especially because the Mexican government needed to make sure that they had a secure hold on the land, especially from the natives in the area who were causing lots of problems for established settlements, had been causing problems since they got set up. They had special requirements, among which were the adoption and adherence to the Catholic faith and learning Spanish language, as well as reporting to Mexican authorities on other issues and such like that. So in 1825, there were somewhere around, I think, 3,000 settlers in Texas, and just under 10 years later, in 1834, there were something like 10 times that number. So it was quite a boom in a short period of time. And most settlers in those areas, both U.S. American settlers and Mexican settlers, generally disregarded most of Mexican law because they were pretty far removed. Similar story, not as great a distance as something you would see in, say, the British American colonial situation. So naturally, people not following the laws or anything like that caused a bit of upset in the Mexican government. They began putting out some more strict regulations and rules and such, which annoyed the settler population and led to some revolts, including the Texas Revolution, starting with the Battle of Gonzales, which really in the long run was pretty inconsequential. But it's the one that kicked it all off. So it is of consequence. Not a strategic very much, but historical, yes. This is the original, well, not the original. The original is the Greek, but we'll come back to that one day. But this in the Americas was the original come and take it standoff, where the citizens in Gonzales had a cannon that was sent to them by the Mexican government, which was for the purpose of helping to ward off Comanche raids. It was supposed to be returned at the request of the Mexican government, whenever that might have come. And it did come around the time when most of these revolts were popping up here and there. And the the central government did not really fancy the idea of some of their colonists out in the Wild West to have access to a cannon when there are revolts going on. So they asked for it back, and they were told, come and take it. And that is how everything started at what they call the Lexington of Texas. So the next major events after that were, at least the highlight events that are exceptionally well known, were the Goliad Massacre in Goliad, where a few hundred, some 400 or so, a little over 400 prisoners of war were executed by the Mexican army. This was after they had surrendered, being explicitly told they would not be executed. It was referred to as the Goliad Massacre. Then you had the Battle of the Alamo, which, who doesn't know about that? If someone doesn't, we'll probably talk about it one day. And then the next major event that everyone knows about, at least every Texan knows about, is the Battle of San Jacinto. This was the one that put a period on the Texas Revolution. It was a surprise attack of the Texas Army under Sam Houston against the Mexican Army, in the chaos of which the president of Mexico, Santa Anna, was captured, and as part of his being ransomed back to his home country, he signed a treaty ending the war, granting independence. The Mexican government did not honor that treaty. They essentially said he had no right signing it. And so basically it was there was a period of time where Texas was basically waiting for Mexico to come back. Generally relatively unprepared. Had some debts here and there that they were really kind of unsure about how they would pay. And sometime later, after a good bit of asking and talking back and forth, the United States officially annexed the state of Texas. Following that, you have the events of the Mexican-American War, which was a victory for the United States and ended up also granting the United States the territories all the way out to California. So that's our very brief history of Texas, or the highlights of Texas. I wanted to throw some fun facts out here and there. And, you have it there. I'll ask to commandeer your laptop in a second because I need to click on a link, which I can't click on a piece of paper. But Fun facts about Texas throughout history. In the early history of Texas, when they were a state in the United States, and when the southern states were rallying around the Confederate cause, it did take a little extra time for the state of Texas to come in. This is thanks to the stubborn efforts of Sam Houston, who was the governor at the time, who I don't recall being any kind of opposed really to slavery at all, but he was very much opposed to leaving the Union. And as a result, he actually ended up being voted out of office, after which, basically with his naysaying and veto power gone, the state of Texas then ratified their secession, ended up leaving. I always thought that was a fun fact about Houston, Sam Houston. And the other one, which I think says a good bit about the culture and the demeanor of Texas and Texans, is the matter of the Texas Aggies and the World Wars. So I'm going to steal this for a second. What I'm going to talk about here, as briefly as possible, is going to be the honor bestowed on Texas A&M University in College Station of housing in their academic building the replica Liberty Bell, which was given to the state of Texas at the end of, as I recall, World War II.
Mm-hmm. You got it.
The end of World War II. One of these was given to every single state in commemoration, and it was up to the states where to put them. Most of them put them in the Capitol building. It was decided by the Governor Allen Shivers at the time that the bell would be housed at Texas A&M University. So, his words were, "The campus of Texas A&M College is a logical depository for this relic. In that statement lies no reflection on the rest of our colleges and public institutions that are fully worthy of such consideration, but Texas A&M, with its military background, is particularly deserving." It's said, and Texas A&M has this on their own website, so you can go look it up. It is said, Shivers also stated, "No one has suffered more than the Aggies, so we'll give it to them." This is because, for those who do not know, Texas A&M was originally solely a military school with the Corps of Cadets producing quite a few officers and sending quite a few of their students to the World Wars. They say here more than 2,200 Aggies served in World War I, with at least 262 making the supreme sacrifice from a dedicated community of students, faculty, and citizens during time of war. In 1918, almost half of the university's students were serving in the military, more than any other college or service academy. In World War II, more than 20,000 Aggies fought, over 14,000 as officers, with 7 receiving Congressional Medals of Honor and 953 paying the ultimate price. So, this is the reason for the Liberty Bell replica of Texas being housed, again, in the academic building at Texas A&M. So, if you're ever in College Station, look it up. It's a nice thing. So I'll give this back to you now. And I'll finish this up with a brief bit about what this means for Texas and Texan culture, demeanor, everything like that. It means, after having flown Six Flags and accepted far more immigrants from far more countries than just six, it's got a naturally diverse community with influence from Spanish, French, Mexican, Anglo-American, Irish, German, Czech, Polish, African-American, Native identities from very early years, and in the later years, with Houston being a major point of entry for the global community into Texas and the United States, there is now also a very large Asian population as well. So it spans over 2 time zones, touches Central and Mountain. It's got multiple biomes. There are the coastal plains and marshes. There's the piney woods. There's the swamps, all of those in the east. There's the central hill country. There is the plateau region on the edge of the Rockies. There's the Great Plains that dip down into North Texas. There's the South Plains that touch the Rio Grande Valley in Mexico. And there's arid, semi-arid West Texas that goes out into New Mexico and Canyon Country. So all of this contributes to a people of Texas who cherish their independence, their resilience, resourcefulness, their neighborly support and hospitality, with a deep sense of community and pride and justice. And with that, we'll leave that on a cliffhanger and give it over to Oxom.
My cue.
My cue to have a sip.
Absolutely. Oxom has a very rich history. There's a lot to talk about, but we're not going to do a deep dive of Texomiya history or Assamese history. I'm going to try and stick to the facts about Oxom or Assam that I think are important to me. So let's start with the most important festival.
Bihu.
Bihu. Maybe with that
Alright, we'll have to edit it.
Yeah.
So, Bihu.
When did it actually start? Nobody knows. It is that ancient. It is commonly believed that Bihu originated long before the Aryan race had even set foot in the Indian subcontinent. There are records of this festival dating back to 3500 BC. Of course, that only means that it has been celebrated long before that date. And various tribes, naturally, in the region claim authority over the name Bihu because they all feel a sense of belonging to this festival. The Brahmaputra Valley in Assam. Brahmaputra River is one of the biggest, by that I mean the widest and the longest, and one of the most deadly at certain places in the entire subcontinent and in Asia.
And the world.
And the world. Well, I only found out recently. You'd think I come from Oxom, I'd know so many things about it already, but I just found out today that Brahmaputra is considered the 9th largest river by discharge volume. So that gives you an idea of how much destruction it's capable of and how big it is. And it's the 15th longest in the world. Well, coming back to the Brahmaputra Valley in Oxom or Assam, with its characteristic tropical wet mesothermal climate, undergoes a seasonal change almost every 2 months. The month of Bohag, which begins from the 15th of April every year, which also happens to be our new year, is the springtime when Bihu is held. And that is the springtime Bihu. We have 3 Bihus, but the one in the springtime in April, the Bohag Bihu, is the biggest and most celebrated.
I'm just going to stop us briefly there and note that you'll probably hear some snoring. I don't know if it'll make it to the microphone or not, but let's see, that is Barry.
That is Barry.
One of our 2 Boxer Pyrenees mixes. And he has to be near us at all times. And currently he is zonked and snoring. So if you hear that, that's what that is.
He takes his guard dog responsibilities very seriously.
The other of them, Scout, is right over there in the doorway.
He's guarding the door.
Yes. Anyway, continue.
I was talking about Bohag Bihu. The Bihu that is held in the month of April is the pre-monsoon period and marks a gradual transition from a relatively dry weather or winter to a hot, wet summer, which makes it an appropriate time for festivity, not just because of the reproductive cycles of most plants are being renewed around the same time, but also because the tropical landscape is still penetrable and people can farm on that land. It's conducive to more human activity. It is the most important festival in the region, like I already mentioned. It unites everybody, which is I believe, is the most important characteristic about Bihu. It unites everybody irrespective of tribe, religion, caste, creed, ethnicity, race, and language. And I don't think we can say that about every ancient festival that we come across usually.
Not many modern festivals either.
Mm-hmm. Well, for the next part, I'm going very briefly into the history of Oxom. For this, I consulted the state government portal that the state government has put up, and I'm going to read this part from their portal because I think they do a decent job of describing the history of Oxom in very brief. The history of Assam can be divided into 4 eras. The ancient era began in the 4th century with the mention of Kamrupa in Samudragupta's inscriptions on the Allahabad pillar and the establishment of the Kamrup kingdom or Kamrupa kingdom. It's only the anglicized way of saying Kamrup. Kamrupa. It's actually Kamrup. That's where I come from.
I believe it has to do with certain declensions of nominative forms.
Absolutely. Yeah. Both in English and in the North Indian languages because like
that's
I mentioned, the inscriptions on the Allahabad pillar, it's up in Lucknow in North India. So it's mainland India. We are not mainland India.
Yeah, I believe the way that you get Kamrupa from Kamrup is the same way that you get Rama from Ram.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Or you get Oxom and Assam.
Mm-hmm.
So the medieval era began with the attacks from the Bengal Sultanate, the first of which took place in 1206, led by Bakhtiar Khilji, as mentioned in the Kanai Borohibua rock inscription. Very ancient, very beautiful. After the breakup of the ancient kingdom and the sprouting of medieval kingdoms and chieftainships in its place, the colonial era began with the establishment of British control after the Treaty of Iandabu in 1826. Well, I want to pause there and mention that Oxom, most of Northeast region was categorized as Oxom as one big whole just before we were annexed by the British. But before that, we were also the only place who never came under the dominion of the Mughal Empire, which was very strong and very powerful during that time all over the Indian subcontinent and surrounding areas. Very proud, very proud. We were very strong military-wise.
You used to be your own country once.
Yeah, for a brief period.
Just like Texas. Anyway.
Texomiya.
Anyway.
So yes, going back into it, the post-colonial era began in 1947 after the independence of India. Before 1947, Assam was its own province and was made to become part of India by the British colonials only at the time of Indian independence. August 15th, 1947 is when that happened. The Assam movement, very famous, very big part of Assam history. There is no Assam history without Assam movement, especially in the modern times. This movement that sort of had its span between 1970s, 1980s, 79 to 85, you could call it, give or take 3-4 years on both sides, was a popular movement against illegal immigrants in Assam. The movement, led by All Assam Students Union, All Assam Gana Hongram Porihod, developed a program of protests and demonstration to compel the Indian central government from the mainland to identify and expel illegals, immigrants, and protect and provide constitutional, legislative, and administrative safeguards to the indigenous people in Assam.
And that's from the Assam State Government portal.
Yes, of course. And I want people to understand that, we still believe very strongly in the fact that the people who are its citizens come before any illegal immigrants, and I don't want any people to have the wrong idea. It's basically safeguarding your own people, your own women, your children, your rights, and making sure that there are less of crime rates and stuff like that. We can do a whole
section
hour on that later. But yeah, it's all in good faith. That's my point.
I think we can give that a brief mention in the crossovers that are coming up after this.
Absolutely. So Assam included most of India's northeast, which is, I keep telling you that, until the 1950s, even after independence, through the 1970s actually, when it's only up around 1970s when the central government started using its unilateral powers. Basically, they just started vetoing to divide the region into smaller states, which of course we never have a problem with because all our states are based on languages, but I'm just saying that we used to be one big whole before that, which probably made us very, very strong. It's real unity in diversity. I mean, while it's amazing, you get to express more of your identity and everything, if there is such a thing, but the states are divided on very different bases in this nation, which would be very, very different from the way it's done in India. Wouldn't be linguistic, but then it goes on to stand still, that it's a good way of practicing the uniqueness of your identities when you're divided up like that. But at the same time, we were our own province once, and we did thwart off the Mughals completely on our own. That's when we were together. Just throwing it out there. Where was it?
I think you had finished the division and you were going into favorite things of Assam.
So I was, well, I'm coming to my next favorite thing about Assam, which is Assam tea. You're drinking some of it right now.
It's cold now, but
well,
it's still good.
You were drinking hot tea some moments ago. But yes, Assam also holds dear its rice, jute, and tea. Rice and tea especially are its pride. The tea species, Camellia sinensis var. Assamica, is native to Oxom or Assam, and some tribes in the region used to harvest it for thousands of years before the Scottish explorer Robert Bruce, I believe in the 1800s. Yes, in the 1800s, sure. Yes. Introduced it to the British, and then, of course, began its association to the elites. That only elites can have rights over its cultivation and such, thereby giving rise to this importing of indentured laborers to work in those tea gardens owned by the elites. The ownership only could belong to the elites. There was no written rule about that, but it became a social phenomenon. And the British are proud owners of that social phenomenon. Assam tea is unique. If I may say so myself, it is the best in the world.
I say so too. I've had lots of tea.
Any good strong tea that you know by any other name, whatever it's called, if you look at the ingredients closely, if it's good and strong, chances are Assam tea was used as a blend in it.
There's different amounts of Assam tea in English, Irish, and Scottish breakfast.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Assam tea as well as Assam rice. We'll do a whole other section on Assam rice later. It has its own politics, it has its own history. It's amazing rice, really, again, the best in the world. And it's very sad we don't get more of that here in this nation. There is more than just basmati rice that comes from India. It is a symbol of identity for us. It still is for me. Now I am not just a Oxomian, I am a Oxomiya Texan. I'm an Assamese Texan, and I'm proud to be an Assamese Texan. And Assam tea and rice is still a part of my identity. We have it in our pantry all the time. So now I'm going to move on about our national song, Assamese national song. It has been in print existence since 1909, much before Indian independence. Like I mentioned before, India got its independence from British Dominion on the 15th of August in the year 1947.
Anything you want to add about the song? Or no?
We could do sections about national songs later.
We can do that.
I can.
We could very easily do a section on Assamese national song. We can do a section on that and let's say Texas Our Texas and the Star Spangled Banner.
Right, absolutely. I can say that the title of the song, of the national song or the state song now, because it's a state now, the state song of Assam is Omurapunardeh. It sort of literally translated to "Oh, country, yours and mine." It's a very welcoming place, which is very evident from the title itself.
So I think this is the part where we'll segue into the affinity between the two. Do you want to start us off on that, or do you want me to do it?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I can take a sip of my water.
Your turn to sip. So we, when we first met, had a few back and forth conversations after after enough time going to and from classes, spending time in the office, things like that. Got to talk about a few things here and there. And so we, both being very proud of our homes, did some sharing and started noticing some similarities. The first, I think, probably, I don't have a guarantee on this, but I am pretty sure that the first was when, I don't know how this came up. Probably someone said something about Texas. And it was not me, by the way. I remember that much. It was not me that brought it up. But somebody found out I was from Texas. And said something about, didn't Texas used to be its own country? Maybe it was Vlad.
Maybe it was one of the 2 or 3 friends and colleagues that we used to.
It could have been. Anyway, in any case, I said yes. That's the thing. Any Texan loves to crow about. It's the fact that Texas was its own country once. I usually like to add that it really quite desperately wanted to be part of the United States after that, because there was really probably not going to be much of a chance of a second win over Mexico after they recuperated from a few other things. And there were some debts there that needed to be cleared up, and basically they were more than happy for the United States to take over responsibility for seeing to the safety of the state. But in any case, it is nevertheless a source of pride for the state that it was its own country. And when I think that was probably one of the first places that we saw this kind of overlap between the two. Not just the fact that Texas and Assam each were their own entities at one point, independent entities, but the fact that both of them are quite proud of that fact. And that's probably where both groups of people get that sense of pride in their independence, stubborn clinging to independence. That's probably where they both get it.
Absolutely. When you or your ancestors have had to fight decades and hundreds of years so that your language that you were born into, just giving you a tiny example, could still breathe and still be used.
And remain a living language.
It definitely makes you appreciate freedom in a whole different way.
You want to pick up some other ones?
Don't you agree? Another fact that brought us closer was our discussions, and by our I mean just the two of us, of course we would talk about it with other people, because other people, friends, colleagues, random people at bars, after knowing where we're from, would have questions about how it is to be a border state. And yeah, but we would have conversations with all those people. But for us, it's just, I think for you and me, it's the conversations between the two of us really that made us realize that we had more in common than we realized. I went from living in one border state, briefly staying in Delhi, the capital of India, because I did my bachelor's and my master's there, and then catapulted myself from Athens, one border in the United States, and then again to Texas, another border state. So my journey has been from Oxom to Texas, from one border state to another, and it takes one to know one sometimes, and that's how I feel about that. And it makes us understand the complications of immigration, illegal, legal, and the implications it has on the society, the languages, freedom, job markets, freedom to even move around and feel safe or unsafe, whether to carry or not, pros and cons, all of that, which we will go into details, promise, in our sessions sometimes in the future, in the very near future.
Americans, especially Texans, will understand what it means to carry or not.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll get into that later too.
Yeah, as much as I love a diverse community, at the same time, I also want my family to be safe and make sure that immigration is possible in a hassle-free way for people who really need to get out of situations, because that's a real threat too. Which brings up to the next point that I was going to make. It has made us realize that we do deeply care about the quality of life, living with family, having our priorities right, making sure that we appreciate the nature, the land we come from. And I think our views about immigration, freedom, all of that plays a large part about our conclusions about the quality of life in general. Don't you agree?
Yep, I think so. I think also the fact that a contributing factor to that appreciation, especially for the land, is partly resultant in the fact that Texas and Assam both also have pretty unique geographies. So I mentioned earlier, there's multiple biomes that exist in Texas. Part of that is because it's big. It'll take you about 13 or 14 hours, I think, to go from one extreme to the other in the place. If you enter Texas coming in from Louisiana on I-10, and you'll come directly into Orange, Texas first, and they'll have a sign there that tells you how many miles it is to get to El Paso, I think it is. Is it El Paso?
I think so.
Pretty sure it's El Paso. We haven't taken the I-10 route for a while.
Yeah, we haven't in years.
But they'll tell you how far it is, and it's 800-something miles. So, and yeah, that's why you can go in one place and be in a swamp or on a coastal plain. You can go to another and see the edge of the Rocky Mountain Range. And you can see quite a bit in between. So you can also get a good bit of different climates.
Absolutely.
And on that note, Assam makes its own climate.
Assam, most parts of it has its own climate because most of Assam is a valley, Brahmaputra Valley, surrounded by hills. So when the wind system comes in to that valley, it gets bounced off from hill to hill, thereby making it possible to make its own wind system, especially in the springtime of the year. We have this famous or infamous, because of destruction infamous, because of lore history famous. We have this famous storm system called Bordoisila. She is personified in the form of a daughter who is coming to her mother's home for short vacation, and nobody could stop her in her path because she really wants that vacation. She's very ferocious and will take anything and anybody out that are in her way. It's fun. I can recite a poem or two or a verse or two later about that.
That'll be fun. So, I think that's about all that we've got about the two places, how they are similar, how we think that makes us similar, how we think that may have had a hand over 5-6 years time getting us and keeping us together. So I think that all that's left now is to wrap things up. This has been, again, our pilot episode for the Texomiya Podcast. We are, in the future, going to bounce back and forth between topics. Like we said in our opening, we're going to go from remedies of the mountaintops to gridiron on the coastal plains, from Avatar Ang to Eric Auerbach. That we thought, aside from sounding catchy, encompassed pretty much the entire set of spectra that we like to talk about. And so we will talk about on this podcast. And so expect a lot of coverage. We also wanted to plug our other channels and platforms. We have another YouTube channel that I mostly manage. I say manage. It will soon be managed. It was just managed because I haven't put anything on it for a while. Dissertations and job searches take up all of your time. So we will be putting some more stuff up, music, on to the channel called Folk Meta. There's already a good bit of material on there as it is. So while you're waiting for me to get up out of my seat and sit back down with an instrument, you can go through some of those. Hopefully not trip on a dog. As you're waiting on that, then you can go through some of the existing material. We also have our Instagram channel account, Instagram page, our Instagram page. As you can tell, she runs most of it because I don't even know what to call it, but I do participate. And that is called Shoots and Greens. You want to talk about what we do on there?
Sure. very briefly, it's our vision of a mindful lifestyle choice, being mindful of what we eat and how much we eat, what we drink, where we travel, where we stay, what brands do we endorse, what clothes we wear, and why, and everything else that comes in between. We're focusing on branding our mindful lifestyle on that platform. Well, we started this channel out mainly shooting pictures and videos of food we cooked at home. Oh, on a painfully tight budget, which still is. But we have started adding other bits and pieces like gardening, travel, puppy dogs, vacation trips, so on and so forth. So stay tuned, I suppose.
So, again, in short, this has been our pilot episode. Tune in next time. I don't know when exactly that's going to be yet, but hopefully it'll be in a week or two for our next talk on the Texomiya Podcast. Tune in also to Folk Meta, where we will put up music on folk instruments, various kinds of music on folk instruments, and Shoots and Greens to get a glimpse into the mindful lifestyle. So, that's all we've got for you today. As we sign on, we also sign off.
God bless America. God bless Texas.
Joi Ai Oxom.